Some places in Michigan wear their history like a badge. Others drown it beneath black water and colder silence, through its ruined sanatoriums, along its haunted mines. In towns where time collapsed, there are stories that still breathe under the floorboards, still whisper, still wait. Tonight, we're going to knock on 6 doors that should have stayed locked. And once you hear what's behind them, you can't unhear it. Lock your doors, put on your headphones, because after this video, you will never see Michigan the same way again. The Eloise Asylum Tunnels. It was once its own city, complete with a post office, a power plant, a pig farm, a fire department, and over 70 buildings. At its peak, Eloise Hospital Complex housed more than 10,000 patients and staff, but some of them never left. Located in Westland, Michigan, Eloise began in 1839 as a poorhouse. By the early 20th century, it had become one of the largest and most infamous psychiatric institutions in the United States. It was a place of innovation, the first hospital in the country to use X-rays, but it was also a place of shadows. Because beneath Eloise, there's a second hospital, one you won't find on brochures or historical plaques. A network of tunnels connects the main buildings of the complex, stretching for miles underground. Originally built to transport patients, staff, laundry, and supplies, without exposing them to the harsh Michigan winters, the tunnels became something else over time, something far darker. Former employees and surviving patients claimed the tunnels were used to relocate unwanted patients, particularly those deemed violent, uncooperative, or inconvenient. Nurses from the 1950s and 60s have spoken anonymously about being instructed to walk them to the South Corridor, a phrase that, according to one retired orderly, meant you'd never see that patient again. There are no official records of patient deaths in the tunnels, but that hasn't stopped the stories. Urban explorers who've entered through crumbled access points describe intense cold, even in the summer. They report the same repeating phenomenon. Lights from above, the old overhead bulbs, flickering for just a second, as if still drawing power. The buzzing sound of an intercom crackling to life, followed by silence. Some have captured EVP recordings of murmuring voices. One file contained a single whispered sentence: "He's still down here." The Eloise grounds were partially demolished in the 2010s, and parts of the complex have been converted into senior housing and government buildings. But the tunnels remain, inaccessible, undocumented, and off-limits. In 2016, a paranormal research team was granted limited access to a sealed section of tunnel beneath Building D. Within the first 20 minutes, they lost all radio communication. Static filled their headsets. Their thermal camera picked up a cold silhouette behind one of the team members, a humanoid shape, motionless, colder than the concrete around it. When they tried to review the footage the next morning, it was gone. The memory card was intact, no signs of damage, but the file was replaced with a single corrupted image, just lines and static. One line, when enhanced, resembled a face. And then there's the man known only as Patient 283. Records show he was committed in 1947, paranoid schizophrenia, non-verbal, no family. But in 1951, a maintenance report listed 283 as the cause of damage to a lower tunnel door, noted as banging for hours without signs of fatigue. A week later, the door was welded shut. Patient 283's file ends that day. No death certificate, no transfer, nothing. One retired staffer said, "We didn't lose patients, we put them somewhere." Tour groups now visit the Eloise main building for its haunted reputation. Guides talk about screams from the stairwells, doors that slam on their own, and laughter echoing through empty halls. But no tours go below ground. And if you find a tunnel entrance, ask yourself why it was sealed. Because some institutions treat the sick, others just bury their past, one locked door at a time. Some doors were built to open, others were built to keep something in. The Paulding Light. There's a road in Michigan's Upper Peninsula that ends in trees, a dead-end quiet surrounded by forest. At night, the stillness is so complete it feels manufactured. And yet, if you wait long enough, something shows up. A single light, floating, flickering, moving with purpose. Locals call it the Paulding Light. First reported in 1966 by a group of teenagers who thought it was a stranded vehicle, the light has become one of Michigan's most enduring mysteries. It appears along a stretch of an old service road near the town of Paulding in Ontonagon County, specifically in a small valley just beyond a power line cut. No consistent schedule, no warning, just sudden brilliance in the dark. Witnesses describe it as a bright white orb, sometimes pulsing red or green. It drifts, then vanishes, reappears, divides into two. rushes forward, then retreats. It hovers, never touching the ground. Some say it weaves like it's searching for something. Others say it watches, and no one can explain it. The area has been investigated for decades. In the early 70s, a team from the US Forest Service set up cameras, telescopes, and infrared sensors. The light appeared multiple times. They recorded footage, but no source, no reflection, no thermal reading. In 1990, a group of physics students from Michigan Tech tried to debunk the phenomenon, claiming it was caused by headlights refracting over the hills from US Highway 45. They set up controlled tests and concluded the light could be mimicked, but locals pushed back hard. The Paulding light didn't always behave like headlights. It moved too slowly, it stopped, it changed colors, and it had been seen long before modern headlights even existed. In one documented instance, a retired state trooper watched the light for over 30 minutes, hovering completely still. It didn't act like a vehicle, he said. It acted like it was thinking. Then there are the stories. The ones without data, but with weight. A railway worker killed on the tracks by a runaway car, now eternally walking with a lantern, searching for something he never found. A mail carrier lost during a winter storm, whose signal light still flickers through the snow. A Native American spirit trapped between worlds, trying to lead the living away from something darker in the woods. One of the most chilling accounts came in 2004, from a couple who drove up from Wisconsin to see the phenomenon. Around midnight, they saw the light pulse, then split. One orb floated into the trees. The other came toward them. The woman described the feeling as not fear, something colder than that. The car wouldn't start. The light stopped 30 feet in front of them, hovering at eye level, casting no shadow. Then it blinked out. When they restarted the engine, all 4 tires were deflated. Skeptics argue it's explainable, a trick of the terrain, or a well-timed hoax, but thousands of people have seen it. Not just tourists and thrill seekers, but rangers, sheriffs, and lifelong residents. Always the same place, always the same silence. And here's what makes it so disturbing. No one has ever captured it properly on video. Footage exists, yes, shaky, pixelated, unclear. But the real light, the one seen with the naked eye, loses something when recorded. Like it chooses not to be captured. Some lights reveal the path ahead, others lead you somewhere you're not meant to go. Not all signals want to be followed. Some are warnings you were never supposed to see. The legend of Pressy. Lake Superior is cold, vast, silent, and old. Its waters are so deep they can swallow entire ships, preserving them for centuries. But it's not just the wrecks resting on its floor that make Superior unsettling. It's what people claim still moves beneath its surface. Something alive. They call it Pressy. The name comes from Presque Isle, a peninsula that juts into the lake near Marquette, Michigan. It was there, according to 19th century logbooks, that fishermen began reporting sightings of a massive, undulating creature, dark green, serpent-like, with a body long enough to stretch between waves. The earliest documented account dates back to 1897, when a steamship captain reported a large black form following his vessel for over a mile. He described it as the length of a train car, rising and falling like a snake. No one believed him, until more sightings followed. In the early 1900s, multiple commercial fishing boats out of Copper Harbor filed similar reports, an eel-shaped creature breaching the surface, turning sideways to reveal a glossy black eye the size of a man's fist, before slipping silently back into the depths. Then came the attack. In 1913, 2 teenagers canoeing near pictured rocks claimed they were struck from beneath by a thick tail like a log. Their canoe capsized. One made it to shore, the other vanished. No body was recovered. Locals dismissed it as a tragic accident, until a logger, days later, claimed to have seen something long and alive slithering through the shallows near the same spot. His description matched the earlier reports: a tapering head, ridged spine, and motion like water itself flexing. As the years passed, the sightings slowed, but never stopped. In 1977, a Coast Guard crew near Whitefish Bay reported sonar contact with a moving object larger than any known fish or vessel. Divers sent to investigate found nothing, but their equipment logged sudden shifts in water pressure and an unexplained cold front, which dissipated seconds after the contact vanished. In 2002, a Canadian freighter crossing near Isle Royale logged an official incident. A displacement wave appeared in calm water, 40 feet wide and without wind. Crew reported seeing a massive dark shape rolling just beneath the surface, visible for only seconds before it was gone. More recent sightings have come from recreational divers and kayakers, especially in the early morning or at dusk. A pair of biologists in 2013 attempted to track what they believed was an unknown aquatic animal based on sonar pings near Grand Island. Their data showed something moving at steady speed, with mass, direction and no known biological match. But the most disturbing evidence isn't the sightings, it's the absence of bodies. Lake Superior is known for its preservation power, cold enough to slow decomposition, still enough to hold the shape of the dead. But in many areas linked to Pressie sightings, recovered bodies go missing or fail to appear entirely. In one case, a local fisherman went overboard near Thunder Bay in 2018. Rescue teams found his life jacket, but no body. His GPS tracker was later recovered, damaged, 20 feet below surface, with what appeared to be bite-like compression marks, too deep for freshwater predators. Skeptics argue it's misidentification, a sturgeon, a wave, a trick of the light. But sturgeons don't rise and fall like serpents. They don't generate sonar pings large enough to match submarines, and they certainly don't leave curved paths in the water that glow faintly at night, as some visitors claim to have seen. One experienced diver, after a night dive near the Apostles, said he felt the water pulse around him. Not a current, a heartbeat. The Great Lakes are young by geological standards, but whatever Pressie is, feels older than the water itself. Some things live in shadows, others live beneath them, and some have waited longer than we've been able to listen. The cursed gravestone of Little Mary. In the quiet shade of Hillcrest Memorial Park in Jackson, Michigan, sits a gravestone worn smooth by time and trembling hands. It's small, unassuming, the kind of stone people pass without noticing. But this one bleeds. Locals call it the gravestone of Little Mary, and they don't say it casually. The legend begins in 1892 with the sudden death of a young girl named Mary McNaughton. She was only 6 years old when she reportedly fell ill with a violent fever. Some say it was scarlet fever. Others claim she was misdiagnosed and buried alive in a cataleptic state. Her parents, overwhelmed with grief, commissioned a statue for her grave, a lifelike sculpture of Mary standing in a white dress, hands folded, eyes closed. But the statue was never completed. Before the artist finished it, rumors began. Groundskeepers claimed to hear crying in the children's section of the cemetery at night, not weeping, but full-bodied sobbing, echoing off the trees. Then came the blood. In 1910, a caretaker discovered dark red streaks running down the side of Mary's gravestone. The grass around it had withered overnight. At first they assumed it was a prank, pig's blood or paint, but the substance was warm, sticky, and fresh. Lab testing was never completed. The sample mysteriously vanished before analysis. Since then, the bleeding has returned, sporadically, always at night, always without explanation. Some say it happens on the anniversary of Mary's death. Others claim it's tied to specific weather conditions, nights with no wind, heavy clouds, and temperatures just above freezing. But no one's managed to capture the moment on film. Cameras malfunction, batteries drain, images come back corrupted, or just black. In the 1980s, a paranormal investigator named Leonard Drake spent 3 nights camped near the grave. On the second night, his recorder picked up what he described as scratching, not from animals but from beneath the soil. On the third night, his tent was found slashed open. He was discovered wandering barefoot on a nearby road, unresponsive, with deep scratches down his back. He never returned to the site. Then there's the local rule, one passed down quietly between teens and long-time residents. Don't say Mary's name more than once near the grave. Some who have tried report waking up days later with nosebleeds, intense nightmares, or shadowy figures in their homes. One woman claimed she saw a small girl standing in her hallway mirror, dressed in white, with eyes closed, and when she turned around, no one was there. The gravestone itself seems to change. Several photographs taken years apart show subtle differences, the shape of the base, the angle of the engraving, even the spelling of Mary's last name, as if something keeps adjusting it or erasing parts of it. Attempts to move or replace the gravestone have failed. In 1994, the cemetery approved a request to relocate it due to persistent vandalism. But when workers tried to lift the stone, their tools broke. Drill bits snapped, crowbars bent. One worker reportedly suffered a seizure on site and never returned to work. To this day, Mary's grave remains in the same spot, still weeping, still untouched. Visitors who come to see it often leave small offerings, flowers, toys, coins, in hopes of keeping the spirit calm. But every so often, someone tries to prove the legend wrong. They walk too close and stay too long. Say her name, and sometimes they bleed. Some graves mark the end of a story, others are still being written. The Whispering Forest of Aqueoc. Some forests hum with life. Others whisper when no one is speaking. Tucked into the northern reaches of Michigan's Lower Peninsula, near the banks of the Aqueoc River, lies a stretch of wilderness avoided even by lifelong hunters. The trees here are dense, tight enough to block the wind. The trailheads are unmarked, and the deeper you go, the more the silence starts to talk back. Locals call it the Whispering Forest. No official name, no sign. But those who live nearby know exactly where it begins and where to stop. The first reports of strange sounds go back to the 1950s. Hunters described hearing voices in unknown languages, deep in the woods, long after nightfall. Sometimes single words, other times entire sentences. Not shouted, but spoken close, like someone was standing just behind you. Yet when they turned around, nothing. The air dead. The trees still. One man claimed the forest spoke to him. Not in words, but feelings. He said he felt an overwhelming urge to leave something behind. His knife, his gloves, a piece of his clothing. When he tried to leave without doing so, the path seemed to loop endlessly, bringing him back to the same fallen log 4 times. He finally dropped his compass. Only then did the trail open again. By the 1970s, hikers had begun referring to the area as the echo zone. Sound behaves differently here. Shouting doesn't carry. Even footsteps feel muffled. Electronic devices, radios, phones, GPS, frequently malfunction. Photographers report blurred or distorted images, often showing faint shadows in places where no one was standing. In 1983, a ranger named Daniel Moffat went missing for over 18 hours while surveying the trail systems after a storm. He was found near the riverbank, dazed and barefoot, clutching a child's mitten. A mitten that didn't belong to him and didn't match any missing persons report on file. Moffat couldn't explain where he'd been, only that he remembered a voice asking if he wanted to stay. He never returned to work. One of the most disturbing patterns is what locals call the double step. Walkers report hearing their own footsteps echoed immediately after each one, not ahead, not behind, but next to them, like something is pacing at their side. Some describe this sound continuing even after they've stopped moving. Just 1 or 2 more steps, then silence. Folklorists have linked the legend to Ojibwe stories of forest spirits, entities not malicious, but territorial. These spirits, known in some oral histories as the Walkers, are said to observe intruders quietly, only acting when something disrespectful is done. A broken branch, a taken item, a shouted word, but the strangest thing isn't what people hear, it's what they don't. In 2009, a small research team from the University of Michigan attempted to conduct a controlled sound study in the area. They set up multiple microphones, recorders, and acoustic panels along a 1-mile section of forest. Over 72 hours, they collected just under 19 hours of ambient audio. But in one 6-minute stretch, near the center of their grid, the audio cuts out. Not silence, not static, just absence, no wind, no birds, no footsteps, as if something reached into the recording and pulled that time out. They returned to the site the following week to try again. This time they brought dogs. The dogs refused to enter the forest. Today the area near the Okeok River remains open to the public. No warnings, no signs, just trails that disappear if you walk far enough. Every year, a few campers go slightly too far off trail. Some are found dazed but unharmed. Others report gaps in memory, strange dreams, or a persistent feeling that someone is still following them, long after they leave the woods. If you ever visit and hear your name spoken softly through the trees, don't answer, because it's not asking. It's listening to see if you'll stop walking. Some forests call you in. Others want something before they let you go. The shadow of the Copper Queen Mine. There's a place in Michigan's Upper Peninsula where machines once screamed through stone, where fire and iron ruled the dark. But now, the tunnels are quiet. At least, they should be. This is the Copper Queen Mine, once a booming part of the state's copper empire. Located near the town of Ontonagon, the mine operated from the mid-1800s until its closure in the 1920s. During its peak, thousands of tons of copper were extracted from its veins, pulled up through shaft elevators that ran day and night. Lives were built around it, and many lives were lost inside it. Some due to collapse, others to toxic gas, a few by other means. Because deep inside the Copper Queen, there's a legend that miners stopped repeating out loud. The Shadow. The first documented reports came in 1876, when a supervisor named Thomas Darrow filed a complaint that several workers refused to enter Shaft 3 after multiple incidents. The report described a black figure seen at the edge of the light. Not a man, not quite shaped like one, but leaning from the rock, watching, waiting. One worker described it as not darker than the dark, darker than anything. At first, the company dismissed it as fear or fatigue, but then the accidents began. Collapsed supports, broken lifts. equipment failing at the exact moment it was needed. Each time the miners swore they saw the same thing, a tall shadow without edges standing still until someone looked directly at it. Then it was gone. In 1881, a 14-year-old errand boy named Elias Veronin entered the mine with a lantern to deliver tools. He never came back out. His father, also a miner, led the search himself. They found Elias's lantern still burning, placed neatly at the edge of a split shaft. Next to it was a handprint, not made of blood or dirt, but burned into the rock. The mine shut down briefly after that, but profit outweighs fear, and by 1890 it was back in operation. The shadow, however, remained. One engineer in 1902 refused to continue working after witnessing what he called a moving gap in the air down one of the deeper corridors. He described seeing his own shadow bending away from it as if repelled. He resigned the next day and left town. No forwarding address. His final note simply read, "We weren't the only ones digging." When the Copper Queen finally shut down in 1921, rumors spread that it wasn't due to depleted resources, but because men refused to go any deeper. Since then, urban explorers and ghost hunters have made their way into the abandoned site. Most turn back within the first few chambers. The air is thick, breathing becomes difficult, equipment fails, batteries drain, and some have captured photos showing a tall, narrow figure standing in the background, always in places where no person could have stood. In 2004, a group of geology students from Northern Michigan University entered as part of a study project. They set up static cameras in the lower chambers. One student reported seeing a patch of blackness detach from the wall and begin to move toward them. They fled. When they reviewed the footage later, the camera had captured no motion, but the entire video file was tinted subtly darker than the control footage, with audio that registered an undetectable subsonic frequency lasting 3 minutes and 17 seconds. The university ended future studies at the site. No official death toll exists for the mine's full operation, but local historians estimate dozens of undocumented fatalities, men buried, lost, or forgotten in the rush to extract copper. Some believe the shadow is a manifestation of those deaths, a guardian, or a warning. Others believe it was always there. One local elder put it best: "You don't see the shadow. You notice you're not alone. Then it shows itself." The Copper Queen sits silent now. The entrances mostly collapsed, the inner tunnels flooded. But every so often, near the old shaft head, hikers report the same thing: a sudden pressure in the chest, a flicker at the edge of vision, and a shadow moving where no shadow should exist, one step too slow to be yours, and not quite human. Some things are buried in mines, others were waiting down there before we even arrived. 6 places, 6 stories that slipped through cracks in the earth, in the stone, in the mind, and not one of them is finished. A hospital that buried its past underground, a light that pulses where no one walks, a creature older than the lake that holds it, a gravestone that refuses to rest, a forest that speaks without sound, and a mine where shadows waited for the last lantern to go out. We like to think Michigan is mapped, measured, explained, but that's just the surface. Because beneath the calm, beneath the cold, there's something else, still watching, still whispering, still waiting for someone to walk a little too far. If these stories found you tonight, you're not alone. We've uncovered chilling mysteries from every state in the US, each one darker than the last. So if you're brave enough, tap into the playlist now and start from the beginning. Click the playlist. Follow the trail. Just know, not everything that disappears wants to stay hidden. Lock your doors, put on your headphones, because after this video, you'll never see Michigan the same way again.